unable to control himself. Yeah. Anyways, so from the plays that were all developed in Latin, we start developing in the native languages of the area. One of them, the first kind of known vernacular play, is called The Mystery of Adam. It basically depicts Adam and Eve in the garden through about Cain and Abel killing themselves or killing each other, not each other, but and it, interestingly enough, much of it, again, it's mostly sung and in tone, but it has very elaborate stage directions. And the stage directions are all written in Latin, but the dialogue is all written in French. Towards the later part of the Middle Ages, these celebrations at festival times had grown into some fairly massive scale endeavors, whereas a town or city would, in coordination with whatever church or cathedral was located, would throw what was called the Feast of Corpus Christi, at which these plays would be presented. The York Cycle in England was 48 plays long. So it would take roughly about a 20-hour period to perform all of these. But again, this is something that only happens once a year or once every few years, so it's kind of a real event. As these become more and more sophisticated, if you're familiar with the Midsummer Night's Dream, you'll know that the mechanicals, the sort of laborers of the town, band together to put on a play. Well, that was very much an accurate depiction of, as cities and towns grew, and they started to develop guilds for not only quality, but also kind of like unionize their work for bakers, shoemakers, fishermen. You had to be a member of the town's guild in order to receive any kind of recognition of payment at that time. The guilds then also took on the identity of acting these plays. So, for example, the Fishermen Guild would be assigned to depict Jonah and the whale, or something along those lines. So they tried to match up the guild's identity with the correlating story from the Bible as they could. Okay? So, yeah. No, this was not like the Roman time of if you messed up, honor, because that was honoring specific gods, that you would start all over again. There's no evidence of that that we know of.
Some of these plays were performed for kings, right? So they're kind of the same idea.
Yeah, but again, they're all liturgical based. They're all based on, dramatizing Bible stories. So these plays were designed to depict the events that God willed in the Bible, and the emergence of players' guilds, because the quality kept growing. We actually eventually developed a sort of, I'll say, a network in pockets of Europe, not throughout, where there were actual evidence of actors' guilds. But again, these actors are specifically designed and oriented towards depicting biblical stories. The height of the sort of most significant records are from a city in France called Lucerne, which very clearly lays out who gets paid, how it gets paid, how it gets organized, and so forth. These records still exist.
That would make sense with the record of one of the things being having the stage direction in Latin, but the actual dialogue in French. I mean, the actor would have to be fluent in all language.
Yep,
or
absolutely.
A guild of qualified actors.
In the late part of the Middle Ages, as the knowledge center of education shifts from the churches to universities, that's when we start to see things get oriented past immediate liturgical. and we get a series of non-liturgical plays or immorality plays, which is what Everyman is. So there are evidence of some non-liturgical or secular plays that develop or along the way. In about 1200, one of the, what was the guy's name? Barbarossa, the German king, depicted this play, Ludus de Antichristo, as a propaganda play against Rome. So this was staged outside the church with about 60 people that depicted the Roman Pope as the Antichrist, and that he, Barbarossa, was the true Holy Roman Emperor that will unify the Catholic world for hitherto forward. Hrosvita,
Yes.
yeah, significant because she, yeah, a female playwright.
People.
One of the first credited with assigning non-liturgical plays. She was a nun, but she came from a background of privilege, so it made sense that she would be somebody who was educated. And she loved the plays of Terence. So she adapted those plays of Terence, kind of promoting the virtues of chaste life and virginal behaviors, so that one of her more notable plays features a very wealthy man who's lusting after 3 young women, I believe it is, and ultimately he gets his because he ends up making love to pots and pans.
Nice.
Think about that for a moment.
Where's she from?
I don't.
She's from Germany.
Yeah.
And there's no evidence that any of her plays were ever performed, though they were printed. So, but she is really significant for 2 reasons, because it's really the first evidence of a female playwright, and she's writing non-liturgical secular plays really kind of before anybody else does. This is a fun note because it kind of promotes the sense of comedy and how humor develops or arises out of this situation. The Feast of Fools would be days in the monasteries when the sort of underling monks would get to make fun of their superiors by basically putting on a talent show blasting them. Okay? So you get this kind of reversal of status things, as well as these sort of as a continuation through the pagan areas of these black market farces. So we kind of come to what the Everyman is, and Everyman is one of the latest examples of a morality play. This is a play that is based in the Christian values of biblical teachings applied to daily life. So you get characters with allegorical names. They're not real people. Every man himself is meant to represent every man.
Oh.
You get the characters' knowledge. 5 wits. 5 wits meaning what? Your senses. 5 senses. Okay? So each one of these characters that you'll encounter is a representation or an extension of the personality of every man. And you will see that every man is meant to kind of go through a series of analysis of his behaviors during his lifetime to assess his worth of getting into heaven or not. Because again, the ancient view of Christianity was this life is entirely an audition for your eternity and your afterlife. And where you go is based upon the collection of your behaviors in this life. I should back up a little bit. The Pater Noster plays are plays that sort of specifically broke away from just depicting biblical stories into actually teaching a lesson about how to be a good Christian. They are depictions of the 7 deadly sins: envy, covetousness, gluttony, sloth, lust, pride, wrath.
Nice.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're still about.
So they are attempts again to teach an audience unfamiliar with their modes of behavior what it means if you commit the sin of wrath or to commit the sin of sloth or whatever. Now, 1507, all the rules change when the Protestant Reformation begins. Okay? So up until this time, 4 years after Everyman, the Protestant Reformation kind of changes the face of Christianity, at least throughout the Western world and on into the New World. Again, all of this is overlapping with the sense of scientific discovery of the Enlightenment, of expanding the borders into the New World. These are things that are starting to happen throughout the Western world as the Dark Ages and the darkness of the Middle Ages. And remember, there's things like the plague wipes out almost a third of the population of Europe at one point. So there's a lot of instability that is starting to kind of turn the tides towards stability. And people are starting to regard a more healthy sense of wonder, kind of like the Greeks did nearly 1,500 years before this. Actually more like 1,800 years. Okay? So that's kind of the setup for Everyman. Again, it's